Rabbi Michael Barclay, and welcome to the Rabbi's Table, a place of dialogue, not a debate, a place where we bring together the icons, the leaders, the people who are really at the forefront in this world as religious leaders, political leaders, social, cultural leaders. We bring them together for dialogue, knowing that we can disagree without being disagreeable, knowing that this world is really based on friendly dialogue, not cliques, but actually learning from and with each other. And we're incredibly blessed today that we have Ambassador David Friedman as our guest. Ambassador Friedman is truly a man who has changed the world and is a phenomenal human being. The son of conservative rabbi, Ambassador Friedman was close with President Trump prior to his election and then became the U.S. ambassador to Israel for all of Trump's first term. He was really at the forefront of creating the Abraham Accords. He has really been involved in everything the president did in that term and as an advisor since then. And we're really going to talk with him today, not just about Israel, not just about Iran, not just about Hamas and Gaza, but about this book that he wrote in 2024. It's an amazing book. It's called One Jewish State. And it's a theological, political, social plan of creating peace in the Middle East through one Jewish state, through a state of Israel. He subtitles it The Last Best Hope to Resolve the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. And one of the things he talks about in his videos and in this is clarity. So we're going to try and have a lot of clarity in this dialogue and learn a lot from this ambassador who is really one of the great men of our time. So we're very, very blessed to have Ambassador Friedman here. Ambassador, you wrote this amazing book, One Jewish State. And what's really astounding and really wonderful about it is in it and in your videos and the different things you've talked about is you're a man who knows so much about the political history of Israel, what's going on, what's needed in Israel right now, Israel and Iran, Israel and Hamas, Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and the Middle East, Israel and all of this. And yet you've written this book that is really deeply ensconced in biblical traditions, biblical teachings. You would expect this to have come from maybe an Orthodox rabbi more than a political ambassador. So can you just talk for a moment about what one Jewish state is from a spiritual perspective, from a biblical perspective, both theologically in a large way, but also theologically in a micro way, your own personal theological journey and spiritual journey?
Sure. Let me try to unpack that a little bit, and thank you for having me, Rabbi. It's great to be part of the kickoff of your what I'm sure will be a very successful program. Really the genesis for this thinking was over the last couple of years as anti-Semitism has grown, all in the aftermath of October 7th of 2023. There has been this, if you will, kind of political and theological argument that Zionism can be divorced from Judaism, that you can be an anti-Zionist without being anti-Semitic, without being hostile necessarily to the Jewish faith. People say, look, I love Jews, I just don't like Zionism. And again, none of this has anything to do with criticizing Israel's particular political activities, which, as you know better than most, not only is that okay, but most people in Israel are more than happy and delighted to criticize their government, and they do that all the time, and no one accuses them of being hostile to Zionism. So what we're trying to understand is, can you be an anti-Zionist? Can you say that the Jewish people, the rights of the Jewish people to live in their biblical homeland can be divorced from the Jewish faith? And so the theological component, if you will, about this book is that you can't. Is that an essential component of Judaism is the restoration of the Jewish people in their biblical homeland, and you get that right from the beginning of the Bible. You get that in the covenants that God made to Abraham, and that He repeated again to Isaac and to Jacob, over and over again. His covenants about how the Jewish people would prosper and grow in this particular land that God gave them. Then you jump ahead to to the enslavement of the Jewish people in Egypt, and where they were forged into in a crucible into a people, into a unified people, and they were taken out of Egypt. Why? To come to the land that God had promised them, about the land, about returning to the land. When they left Egypt, right, they could have stopped along the way. You know the path. They went north along the eastern side of the Jordan River. That land was okay. I mean, it wasn't. Lots of those places weren't inhabited. They could have parked themselves there and said, okay, what, we don't need to keep walking. No, the whole idea was to get to the land of Israel. When they got close at the end of Moses' life, he prayed to God, let me please go and bring these people to their homeland in the land of Israel. It's all he wanted. And even Moses was not given that right. Ultimately, it was Joshua that had to take the Jewish people into the land of Israel.
So
then again, to the land of Israel.
I'm going to interject if I can for a moment, okay?
Sure.
So because you're basing the entire argument on the holiness of the Tanakh, the holiness of the Bible, of the Torah and of the Bible. And
but with more than that, but sure. I mean,
so we're just talking the theological points right now. So,
so look, we have 613 commandments that we're supposed to observe, and there are a good number of them that can only be observed in the land of Israel. You can't do it if you don't live in the land of Israel. So yeah, the theology is very strong, and the whole concept of reward and punishment with God or the Jewish people is, if you do right, you prosper in the land. If you don't do my will, then you are exiled from the land. So the land is integral to the entire faith.
So let's talk about this for just a second, because you're a political expert, but you're basing your argument, and to a great extent, upon the theology that goes back thousands of years. We can base it on the archaeology. We've been there forever. We can base it on a lot of things, but you're basing a lot of this on the theology. But what about, how does that interact with someone who believes in replacement theology, that this vow that God made to Abraham and his descendants has actually been replaced by Christianity? Or for someone who, even more so, who doesn't believe in the sacredness of the Torah, of the Tanakh, of the Bible? What do you say to someone like that when you're talking about it theologically, or do you?
I tell them that the theological argument is not for you. Let's talk about other arguments. I mean, I'm not trying to persuade someone who doesn't believe in the sanctity of the Old Testament. I'm not trying to convert them or persuade them that they should believe. So there are a lot of other arguments that get you to the same one Jewish state outcome. My point is simply, if you do believe, and you believe in God's will, and you believe that God's will is eternal, and that God didn't change his mind anywhere along the way, which, by the way, I think is a false argument. I mean, replacement theology has been, it's been really repudiated by a good number of scholarly Christians, and
I agree.
In order to and to adopt it, you'd have to basically say, hi, God was just kidding when he made all those covenants, made all those covenants to the Jewish people, and now he's going in a different course. So it's a tough argument to make. But look, people believe whatever they believe. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not a theologian. I'm not saying people should believe. But if they happen to believe in the sanctity of the Old Testament, this is where it leads you. Now, if you don't believe in that, so my argument is, look, let's say all you care about is human rights, the essential dignity of the human being, regardless of how they look or how they believe. So my argument there is that the same notion of a one Jewish state, a political outcome, is for you. If all you care about are the Palestinians, one Jewish state is for you. If all you care about is national security, one Jewish state is for you. So what I try to do is I take all these different vectors and show that they all ultimately lead to the same place, which is Jewish sovereignty over the biblical land of Israel, or at least Judea and Samaria. I mean,
okay. So I want to be conscious of a number of different things, and we've got a theological argument.
Yeah.
And if you are a devout Jew or Christian, there's no question that the land belongs to the people, to the Hebrews. Agree?
Yep.
Since, to a certain extent, and maybe this is a rhetorical question, to a certain extent, the tradition of Islam also accepts the Hebrew scriptures, then in theory, they should accept this biblical land as well, shouldn't they? Just very briefly.
Yes.
Okay. So in theory, any devout Christian needs to accept, from just a theological standpoint, that the Hebrews belong in Israel, period, by the biblical standards. And you truly believe that our borders should be the biblical borders, correct?
I'm satisfied with Judea and Samaria. The biblical borders could extend to the Euphrates River. I'm not pushing that. I'm not pushing for that.
Okay. But you are pushing for Judea, Samaria, and parts of Gaza, parts of Sinai.
Yeah.
Where does that end?
No, it would be Gaza and it would be Judea and Samaria. Although my book doesn't address Gaza because it's frankly right now it's just too complicated. I'm trying to make arguments that go beyond the theology and because Gaza is so unstable right now, I'm trying not to.
Okay, and so we're going to come back to this in a moment, but there is both a theological, historical, and archaeological proof that this really is the Jews' land and should be their land to control. Agreed?
Of course.
And then we're going to come back to that in a little bit, and take that to another step, maybe a little bit deeper as well. We'll be right back with the Rabbi's Table. So we're back at the Rabbi's Table, and extremely blessed to have Ambassador David Friedman, the former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, here with us. Ambassador, you and I both agree, you said it briefly a moment ago, for us it's unquestionable that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I was not blessed to know the man. You probably knew Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, correct?
Yes, but not well.
Okay. He gave an amazing definition, and about anti-Semitism, I'm sure you studied it as well, that it's a virus that mutates, that the hate is always there, but over time it changes how it manifests. And in the Middle Ages, Jews were hated for their religion. By the time you get into the 18th, 19th century, they're hated for their culture. It just had mutated. It was the same hate, it was just mutating differently. And then by the time you get into the mid-20th century, Jews are hated for their nation. Simply put, it's okay for everyone else to have the indigenous people to have their own nation, but it's not okay for the Jews to have their own homeland. And so he defines anti-Semitism, that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism in the 20th and 21st century. Now, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I have seen over and over, since the 1980s and 1990s, people couching their hatred for Jews as complaining and hating Israel. You've experienced the same thing, I assume, many, many times more and at a much deeper level, correct?
Sure.
So if anti-Zionism is the expression of anti-Semitism, and you've already said very succinctly and clearly that you can criticize Israel's government, its democracy, but that's very different than criticizing the concept of Zionism. We have a big, big problem in this country. You're living in Israel now most of the time, all the time?
Yeah, half the time.
Okay. So you're familiar enough with especially since October, the way that anti-Semites, I prefer just saying Jew haters, because I think that's more specific, have felt the permission to express their hatred by expressing a hatred for Israel, calling it genocidal, calling it all these horrible things that just aren't true. We're the most ethical army in the history of the planet. But you have people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes, and they have more followers than there are Jews on the planet, and they couch their hatred of Jews as a hatred of Israel. Now, my belief is part of this has to do with they don't have a real faith in Jesus themselves. If they did, they wouldn't hate Jews the way they do. They'd be comfortable in their own theology and be happy to let us have ours. But how do we deal, and how is that affecting, how are these crazy social influencers like Tucker and Candace, how is this affecting our politics in Israel and the relationship of Israel and the U.S. in your experience?
Well, look, I think from Israel, and I just was with some pretty high-ranking people there yesterday, they're really concerned because they don't understand what prompted this. It came seemingly out of nowhere, although nothing comes out of nowhere. I mean, but it surprised a lot of people. Look, Israel was attacked on October 7th of 2023, one of the most horrific attacks ever inflicted upon any people. October 8th, right? Israel didn't respond, didn't mobilize its army and really respond for 2 to 3 weeks. October 8th, before Israel did anything, the protests are out there supporting Hamas, right? So this has nothing to do with Israel's conduct of the war. And again, people can play armchair quarterback and try to micromanage the war. I challenge them to make any points that are actually relevant in the context of a real battle. And I agree with what you said about Israel's army being the most ethical in the world. But this anti-Israel stuff had nothing to do with how Israel was prosecuting the war. It was up and running before Israel even responded. And what that tells you is that you have this, all that money that was committed to all the universities around the country. I mean, the Qatari money, the Saudi money, the Turkish money, the Soros money, all that money that was financing think tanks, that was financing endowed chairs in Middle East studies and universities, all the university professors and administrators who were bought and paid for. And we saw how some of them, squirmed around, when Elise Stefanik was asking them questions a year ago. All those people were bought and paid for by the anti-Israel lobby, and we just didn't see it coming. And as soon as there was an opportunity,
wait. How could we not see it coming? How did we miss this elephant in the room? Or how did so many of us, and so many organizations, how was that missed? You're there. Why weren't we combating this? I mean, we're losing this war in PR. How did we miss this?
You know what? I think we saw it in the context of, look, it's almost impossible to get tenure if you're a pro-Israel professor at a major university. We said, okay, look, we'll send our kids to college, they'll get good educations, they'll become doctors and lawyers, and they don't have to deal with these universities afterwards. We assumed that it was just kind of an intellectual elite that historically has not been pro-Israel. I don't think any of us really thought that as soon as Israelis were being massacred, that tents would start appearing at campuses with Free Palestine and Students for Justice for Palestine and all these organizations. How did we miss it? I don't know. I mean, we all bear some blame. I mean, I'm not most of us are not professional Jews. I mean, we're not, we don't commit ourselves to fighting anti-Semitism, but there are some organizations that do. And yeah, they dropped the ball, there's no question. But again, I can see how we thought we had a problem, but we thought it was a problem that was manageable. I don't think we ever thought it would get to this. And here's what people are looking at from the Israeli perspective. They're saying these kids who are somewhere between 18 and 30, who absolutely despise Israel, Israel's approval rating there is maybe 20%. If they don't change, in another 20, 30 years, they're going to be determining the leaders of the United States.
We see this in the city of New York, where 43% of Jews under the age of 30 voted for Mamdani, who I would argue is not a socialist. He's a Muslim. He's an extremist Muslim. He's not much more so than a socialist. So, and seeing the signs at campuses, I'm by UCLA. I have families who have kids in UCLA. My kids are not quite at the college age yet. To see these signs, queers for Palestine, forgetting about the fact that there's no such thing as a historical Palestine, which, that's just, it's invented concept. Forgetting about that for just a moment, the idea of queers for Palestine is like a chicken cheering for Colonel Sanders. If they went to any of these Arab countries, they would be beheaded, let alone queer Jews for Palestine. And I don't know if you've seen this one, and it is an actual group, Ambassador, Queer Rabbis for Palestine.
I've been watching this for a couple of years, as have you, and we don't seem to be able to change their minds. They're not rational. They're not acting from a position of fact gathering. They're deeply embedded in the notion that Judaism is all about virtue signaling. It's about showing that you care about the people that want to kill you. Because if you care about people that want to kill you, then you are truly a good moral person, and you can hold your head up high. And I can't figure out how to reach these people.
So let me ask a question. Okay, we're not succeeding in reaching these people. These social influencers who have millions and millions of followers they are dragging these young people along like sheep, including not just on the far left, but in the Republican Party. So let me ask you a point blank question. In today's world, can a GOP candidate who is friends or siding with these kind of influencers, these anti-Semites, who is siding with anti-Israel forces, for lack of a better term, do you believe that a GOP candidate like that can win primaries or even get elected as a Republican candidate in this country now because of what's gone on with these social influencers and how people are following them? I mean, can an anti-Israel candidate for the GOP get elected?
Can an anti-Israel candidate get elected? Yes. Well, I mean,
in the Republican Party.
I mean, well, Massey, Tom Massey is an Israel hater. He may or may not win his primary that's coming up in a couple of weeks, but he certainly got into office with those views. There's a couple of other Republicans. Look, Republican Party generally is about 80 to 85% strongly pro-Israel. About 85 to 90% of support the president's attacks on Iran. I don't think the Republican Party is the problem. Democrats are I hate to say it, are fast becoming a lost cause. Although I don't want to lose anybody because we can't afford to lose anybody. But it's really, really tough. And independents lately have moved away from Israel. Got to try to get them back. I mean, look, there's a lot there, and what I'm, there's a lot of organizations that are working on this. A lot of people, I'm not smart enough, and I'm just one guy. I'm not going to defeat anti-Semitism. What I can do,
I don't know. You've done a large portion of it and a big job doing it. We're at this break, so but let's continue this in just a moment.
I'm sorry. I got a siren. I got to stop. Do you hear that?
Jeremy, I can't hear anything right now. What?
Do you hear that? I have a siren.
Oh my God. Okay, you got to get to the shelter.
I'm sorry.
No. So go to the shelter. You have WhatsApp?
I do, yeah.
Go to the shelter. Let's get you to the shelter first.
Okay.
And we
I'll
can.
Talk to you.
Go do. Let me know when you're in the shelter if you can.
I'll be at the shelter in 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
So we're back with Ambassador David Friedman, who is just. We had to take a break because you were just in a bomb shelter. You're okay, thank God. I understand there's some Iranian ballistic missiles that were being fired at central Israel, but you're okay. Everyone's okay, thank God.
Good. Yep.
Yes, everyone's safe.
We're all safe.
Okay.
Thank God.
Okay. We're being joined in this segment by Angela VanderPluym. Angela is an amazing, amazing woman and human being. She is an expert. Ambassador, I think you'll really get to know and like her. Angela is an expert on the whole relationship, this red-green relationship of Islam and the anti-Semitic Christians. She's an expert on social media. She's been very, very involved in the whole social media world and influence herself and with different forms of influencing and helping other people. She is a real lover of Israel. Truly someone who understands Ahavat Yisrael, the love of Israel. So Angela, thank you for joining the ambassador and myself for this next segment.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on with you, Ambassador.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Wait, what about me? Okay. So.
Well, you're a great friend, and I've known you for years, so I'm very excited to be on with you as well.
You're a blessing. So, Ambassador, let's talk theology for a sec, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And let me give it a little bit of background that you probably know 95% of what I'm going to say right now, and as soon as I start talking about it, you will probably know where it's going. In the Bible, in the Hebrew Scriptures, everybody is forgiven. Everybody's forgiven. King David sleeps with a married woman. He gets forgiven. There's one exception. That exception is someone called Amalek. We are told that we are to be at war with Amalek forever. We are to destroy Amalek, not just defeat Amalek. We are to blot out its memory from existence. This is all in the Bible. In 1 Samuel, it actually talks about, chapter 15, I think it is, it actually, King Saul loses his kingship because he's commanded to destroy the Amalekites, to destroy Amalek, and he doesn't. And as a result, he actually loses his kingship. And the prophet Samuel says, you were told to kill the men, the women, the children, the animals, and you didn't. So Chazal, our sages, have long discussions about what is this? Why are we at war with Amalek forever? What is Amalek? And Rabbi Elijah Shochet, I'm not sure if you were familiar with him, blessed memory, he just died about a month ago, a little over a month ago. Rabbi Shochet wrote an amazing book called Amalek, the Enemy Within. And it really succinctly put what Amalek is in Jewish theology. Amalek is the archetype that attacks from behind. The Amalekites attacked the ancient Hebrews from behind, where the women, the children, the old, the infirm were, the sick. And that anytime someone is not attacking from the front, not attacking soldiers, but they're consciously going after the weakest part of ourselves, that's Amalek. And externally, that could be physically Amalek. Internally, that would be, as an example, an addiction. An addiction goes after the weakest part of the person's psyche. Cancer is Amalek. It goes after the weakest cells. And both in addiction and cancer, you don't negotiate. You don't have one drink. You cut it out. You destroy it. And that's sort of the understood theology of Amalek. And so here's the issue. On October 6th, I would have said that Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, Iran, these are our enemies. And I still would say only because they choose to be our enemies. Iran, Hezbollah, the Houthis are still our enemies because they choose to be, not because we want them. But by a theological definition, you've identified yourself as someone who really believes in the sanctity of the Bible and its teachings. You just find that with your understanding of biblical Israel. That defines Hamas as Amalek. As painful as it is, the text says what it says. They're not to be defeated, they're to be destroyed. That's a tough statement. Recognizing that Hamas, by attacking children on October 7th, self-identified as Amalek. What should be done with Hamas, in your mind?
So first of all, I think what should be done with Hamas, I don't think I need the example of Amalek to know what should be done with Hamas, because we're even in the 21st century we're able to assess our enemies and to determine whether or not we can live with them, make peace with them, whether we can negotiate with them. I mean, these are not foreign concepts to us. I don't think we need to reach back to theology to get there. I mean, it reinforces those views. So of course Hamas needs to be destroyed. Now, the bigger question that I think you're alluding to, which is the Tucker Carlson interpretation of that scripture, which he has no right or entitlement to interpret because he's a theological moron. But
that's actually complimentary. He's much more ignorant than a moron when it comes to that. So please. Yes. I was reaching for a word. That's what came to mind. But what Tucker Carlson says is that the Jewish people, because they have this concept of Amalek, they believe in collective punishment. That anybody, that reaches out against them, that anyone that lifts a hand against them, they are commanded to kill their wives, their sisters, their brothers, their sheep, if they have any. That's his interpretation, and that was a specific admonition several thousand years ago about Amalek. I think the message of Amalek is very, very, very clear, that there are people that you cannot make a deal with. There are people that you cannot coexist with, that you cannot live side by side with. I agree with that. And I think we know who those people are. But that doesn't mean that if, somebody, look, we have this guy now called the son of Hamas, right? He's the son of one of the Hamas leaders. He's written a book. He's renounced everything that has to do with the Hamas ideology, okay? There's no biblical obligation to kill him. There's no biblical obligation to chastise him. Just the opposite. We embrace him because he's found the right path, notwithstanding his background. Let's get into this just a little bit. And Angela, please chime in, because I know you have great knowledge in a lot of this. Ambassador, we're on a limited timetable. I'm conscious of simple answers. Our enemies, we defeat. Should we destroy Hamas? The Hamas soldiers, should they all be killed? As painful as that is a concept, should they be?
I think so. And
okay.
Also because if you arrest them, they become hostages that they get bargained for.
Okay, so let me go on with this.
Hang on, Rabbi, it's not just if you arrest them. We've saved them. You know, Yahya Sinwar, we saved him. We brought him back to health, you know? And he came, and what did he do? He came back and he was one of the main orchestrators of October 7th. So if we don't eradicate and destroy Amalek, we're warned that they will come back and they will hunt us again.
So let's take that a step farther for both of you, Angela, for both of you, right? So we're in agreement, you've agreed that Hamas soldiers should be killed. Part of the reason it says our understanding is to kill the children of Amalek, the animals of Amalek, not future generations, but that particular generation, is specifically because they will grow up wanting to revenge their father. So what do we do with the children of Hamas soldiers, many of whom are indoctrinated by the time they're 3? Angela, Ambassador, just whomever wants to go.
Well, I'm not there. I don't believe in killing children, okay. No matter how bad their parents are, and I don't think that's required of us, theologically.
Okay, Angela?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to advocate for killing children. I understand the biblical tenets that say, we must kill the women, children, men, and animals. I understand that. But however, they have been indoctrinated. And many people say that, it might not just be one generation, it may be 2 generations to reach them and get rid of that indoctrination. So as a human being, because I'm not God myself, I would like to have hope that we could, re-educate them. But the Bible says what it says.
It says what it says. So, Ambassador, I'm going to address this more to you. Hamas soldiers, they should be killed. They should be eliminated. Yes?
Yes.
Their wives, they're also soldiers. They're unarmed soldiers.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Okay. No, I'm asking. Okay, so you and I agree, Ambassador, a 2-state solution is doomed to failure from the start. And there is a 2-state solution. It's called Israel and Jordan. I wrote years ago an article that a 3-state solution would work is if you take all of Gaza and you make it into a Singapore of the Middle East. And I actually wrote this 2 years before the president came up with the idea. So I'm not alone in that idea. And what is, very quickly, because I know of the time, and I have another very important question for you. What's the solution in 2 sentences that you believe is the solution for peace in Israel right now?
Israeli sovereignty over all of its biblical homeland, from Judea, Samaria, Gaza, and of course inside of Israel, combined with a very hard approach to those that want to kill us, and an outstretched hand to those that want to live with us. So I think that dichotomy, but with Israel in charge of the entirety of the territory.
Angela?
I mean, there's a lot more than that, but those are the 2 sentences.
Okay, Angela, you agree with that?
I do. I agree with that. I think we've seen, even the PA, the Palestinian Authority, the people that they describe as moderate, they're not moderate. They have, a pay for slay program. Anyone that goes out and kills a Jew gets paid for they get paid for the rest of their lives.
And look, let's remember that the Quran specifically says the day of judgment will not come until every Jew is killed, and the Jews that are left hide behind trees and rocks, and tree says a Muslim of Abdullah. So let me, all right, so we're on that page of eliminating the enemy, not trying to get to a place of negotiating peace, but eliminating. Ambassador, and I ask this question of every person I ever sit with. You have great experience in life. You have more experience about what's going on in Israel and the world and the relationships than, you're probably in the top 5 people on this planet in terms of your understanding of Israel and politics and the Middle East. You're that elevated, and again, thank you for all you do. You have your father, I believe your grandfather, you've created a peace center. one teaching, one thought, one statement that really codifies in a very simplistic way your philosophy, your teachings, or one thing that if you could share with the world in one sentence that would be your gift?
Look, I don't believe that human beings are inherently evil or inherently good. I think we have an ability to reach out and to try to make things better, but at the same time, we've got to be brutally tough on people that want to kill us, and just recognizing that some people we're not going to convince, some people we're going to have to fight against. But we shouldn't give up the opportunity to reach out to those people that have a different view. And I know that both groups exist within the Palestinian community.
Okay, and you personally believe in peace for everyone. True?
Yeah, I believe in the biblical notion of human dignity and peace, and we should do everything we can to avoid bloodshed. But we have to remain alive.
May you be blessed to always have peace in your family and to continue the teaching and great work that you do. Angela, we'll see you next week. Ambassador, thank you so much for being here and even being with us as you had to go to a shelter. God bless you and your family, and truly may you be safe now and always.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Faith over fear every day.
And in some ways, that is exactly what we need to do and what Ambassador Friedman has been saying to do, put faith over fear. It's so fascinating to talk to a man like that, truly a political envoy, one of the major political forces in our world for the last 20 years, and his commitment to the Bible and to understanding a biblical Israel. So I think it's important that we always end our shows and everything with a spiritual teaching of some sort. And I think that there's a teaching in the Torah, in the book of Genesis, that might be appropriate for what we just saw. We just heard Ambassador Friedman talk about these biblical notions, biblical concepts. Why should we care? Our sages ask the question, they say, why do we care that in the book of Genesis it talks about how God created the world we weren't even around? And the idea that they answer, the idea is that we need to know that God created the world because it means God can give the world to whomever, however he wants. If I create a piece of art, I get to give it to you. If I create a sculpture, I get to give it to my wife, my children. Whoever creates it does get to give it. And so we learn in the beginning of Genesis that God created the universe. Therefore, God has the obligation, privilege, and we are blessed to be able to receive the gifts from him. God made a covenant. Covenant means everlasting. He made a covenant with Abraham, with Jacob, that land of Israel will always be for the Jewish people. It will be their home for the Hebrews. And we need to keep that covenant, as the ambassador just said. Look forward to seeing you next week. We'll have some special guests at the Rabbi's table. In the meantime, keep faith over fear and always be safe and always be blessed.